You will not believe what Alcaraz did on Sunday as he got eliminated from Miami Open at the shock of the audience. At the start of the second set of his third-round match at the Miami Open, Carlos Alcaraz walked to his bench, leaned toward his coaching box, and sent something that nobody expected to hear from the world number one. He did not ask for tactical advice. He did not request a towel or a change of grip. He said he couldn't do any more. He said he couldn't take it anymore and wanted to go home. He said it 5 times in a row, each repetition louder than the last, in front of thousands of people and every broadcast camera in the building. The clip has been viewed tens of millions of times since Sunday, and almost every single person watching it is asking the same question. What is actually going on with Carlos Alcaraz? Here is the verdict, and it is going to surprise you. What happened in that changeover is not a crisis. It is not a mental collapse. It is not evidence that something has broken inside the world number one. It is the most honest thing a great athlete can do, which is let the people around them see exactly how they feel in the moment when everything feels like too much. And understanding the difference between those two things, between a genuine breakdown and a genuine human moment, is the only way to understand what the next chapter of the 2026 season looks like for the player who won the Australian Open and Doha and 16 consecutive matches, and then in the space of 3 weeks lost 2 in a row and stood at a changeover bench in Miami saying he couldn't take it anymore. Let's start with what the scoreline suggests, and then look at what actually happened, because they are two very different stories. The scoreline says Korda beat Alcaraz 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 in the third round of the Miami Open. Korda is ranked 36th. He is a capable player who won a challenger title in Delray Beach earlier this year, and who had beaten Alcaraz once before in the second round of the 2022 Miami Open, when the world number one was not yet the world number one. The scoreline says Alcaraz lost to a player ranked well outside the top 30 in the third round of a Masters 1000 tournament for the second consecutive year in Miami. That is the surface reading. The result looks like an upset. The result looks like a problem. What actually happened was more specific and more interesting than that. Alcaraz won the second set. He was down 3-5 in the second, and he came back. When Korda served for the match at 5-4, Alcaraz broke. Then he broke again and took the set 7-5. He was competing. He was fighting. The changeover where he said he wanted to go home was not the moment he gave up. It was the moment at the start of the second set, when the weight of the entire fortnight pressed down on him, and the thing that came out was the truth. He felt destroyed. He said so. He then went out and won the second set. The match was decided in the third set by a single break at 3-3. Korda broke in the seventh game and served out to win 6-4. The decisive margin in the whole match was 1 break of serve in the third set. The difference between the world number one winning and losing was 1 break in 1/3 set after 3 weeks of accumulated fatigue, a first-round bye, a win over Fonseca, and a changeover conversation where he admitted out loud that he was running out of resources. He lost by the smallest possible margin. He said so himself in the press conference. He said there were a lot of tight moments he did not make the most of, and that Korda was better in those moments. He gave Korda full credit. He did not blame the conditions or the schedule or the crowd or the fatigue. He said Korda played a great game and deserved to win. I can't take it anymore. I want to go home now, man. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. 5 repetitions. Each one in front of Samuel Lopez, who tried to motivate him, who said, "Come on," and "Go all the way." Alcaraz did not receive that motivation quietly. He pushed back against it and said the same thing again and again until the words ran out and the set had to begin, and he went back out and fought back to win it before eventually losing in the third. What the changeover conversation reveals about the psychology of being Carlos Alcaraz right now is the most important thing this script is going to cover, and it requires understanding the specific pressure that has been building since January without the public discourse fully acknowledging the weight of it. He opened 2026 by winning the Australian Open in 5 sets against Djokovic in a final that lasted 3 hours and included a 5th set that required everything he had. He flew from Melbourne to Doha and won the title there in 5 matches. He flew from Doha to Indian Wells and won 5 matches before losing to Medvedev in the semifinal. He flew from Indian Wells to Miami and played Fonseca in the second round and Korda in the third. Across 19 matches since January, he has competed at the absolute highest level of professional tennis, with 2 weeks off between the Australian Open and Doha, and essentially nothing between Doha and Indian Wells, and then the straight drive from one California tournament to the next Florida one. He is 22 years old, and he has been at the top of the sporting world's attention for every single day of 2026. The fatigue is not just physical. Tony Nadal identified the physical components specifically at Indian Wells, saying he had seen Alcaraz looking tired in some rallies and running on fumes. The physical fatigue is real, and its symptoms are visible in the statistics. In the matches since the Medvedev semifinal, his first serve percentage has dropped below its season average. His breakpoint conversion rate has been lower than at any point in the preceding 16 matches. His net approaches, which at Indian Wells and in the Australian Open were producing points at close to 90% efficiency, have been less reliable. Those are not the statistics of a player whose technique has deteriorated. They are the statistics of a player whose physical resources are not at the level required to execute the technique he has developed. But the psychological fatigue is the deeper and more interesting layer. Alcaraz said after the Korda loss that he felt his opponents had more to win than to lose against him, that they played without pressure because of the expectation gap between his record and theirs. He said it was a bit annoying, but that it had to be accepted. He has been saying versions of this since the Rinderknecht match at Indian Wells. The target on his back, the Federer comment, the Tony Nadal disagreement, the press conference exhaustion, the Instagram posts in the same night as losses. He has been managing an extraordinary amount of external expectation and emotional labor, while simultaneously trying to compete at the highest available standard week after week. The changeover conversation was not a breakdown. It was the pressure valve releasing momentarily, in a specific and private context, in a way that happens to have been filmed. What makes the Alcaraz psychology so fascinating is the specific way he holds 2 contradictory states simultaneously, without one canceling the other. He said he couldn't take it anymore and then went out and broke back to win the second set. He said he wanted to go home and then competed fully for another hour and a half. He said the match was a tight one, he hadn't made the most of, and gave Korda full credit. He said he was going home to reset, and that the clay season was around the corner, and he was excited about it. All of those statements were made in the same afternoon about the same loss. The person who said he couldn't take it anymore is the same person who said his mind was to reset and be ready in good shape for the clay season. The emotional honesty of the changeover and the competitive resilience of the post-match press conference are both genuine. They are both part of the same human being processing an extremely difficult few weeks with exactly the transparency that every press conference about the target on his back has been building toward. Korda's own reading of the match is the one that gives the Alcaraz side of the story its most objective external reference point. He said he had been through a lot of things and had not been able to get things done against top players before. He said he had felt that when playing top players, he would start spraying the ball and try to do a little too much. He said today he just played average, played his game, and somehow that worked. That description, playing average, is the specific thing Alcaraz was describing when he said the tight moments were going against him. Korda did not produce a miraculous performance. He played within himself, executed his game plan, and the gap between his internal calm and Alcaraz's accumulated exhaustion was the gap of one break in the seventh game of the third set. Korda said he took the scenic route. He did. The scenic route was enough, because the person on the other side was running on fewer resources than at any point in the 2026 season. The ranking implications are the forward-looking dimension that every conversation about this loss has been circling without landing on clearly. Alcaraz leaves Miami at 17-2 on the season and remains world number 1. But Sinner has 0 points to defend between now and the Rome Masters, while Alcaraz is defending significant points from his Monte Carlo, Barcelona, and Madrid titles last year. The specific window for Sinner to close the gap is the next 6 weeks. Alcaraz knows this. He said in his post-match press conference that the clay season had really good tournaments that he was excited to play. He said he was going home to reset his mind and reset the batteries. He said he wanted to get back on track. The language of reset is the language of someone who understands the task ahead and who is not fooling himself about his current state. What does the Miami loss and the changeover conversation mean for what happens next? Here's the prediction. Alcaraz goes home to El Palmar. He eats his mother's cooking. He sees his grandfather. He gets 2 days of rest before Samuel Lopez brings him back to the practice court. He arrives at Monte Carlo as the defending champion on the surface he loves most, on clay that bounces high and rewards the specific explosive movement that is the foundation of his game, in conditions that are completely different from the fast outdoor hard courts that produced both of his recent losses. He wins Monte Carlo. He defends all the points. The clay season resets everything. By the time he gets to Roland Garros in late May, the "I can't take it anymore" from a Miami changeover will be a footnote in a chapter that ends with his 8th Grand Slam title. The reason I believe that is not wishful thinking. It is the specific pattern of every difficult moment Carlos Alcaraz has had in his career. He was destroyed by Nadal on his 18th birthday and beat him a year later. He lost early at Miami last year and then dominated the entire clay season. He lost to Medvedev at Indian Wells 2026 and then produced a 100 miles per hour forehand that left Fonseca standing still 3 days later. He does not let difficult moments define the arc. He uses them. The changeover conversation is the most human thing he has done in public all season. It will be the most shared clip of his career for the next few weeks. And in 6 weeks at Roland Garros, when someone shows it to him in a press conference and asks how he feels about it, he will probably smile and say it was honest and that he is glad he went home. The specific tactical story of why Korda beat him is worth telling properly because the commentary has focused almost entirely on the changeover conversation and has underreported what actually happened between the lines. Korda entered the match on the back of a Delray Beach title and a strong early season that had taken his record to 12-5. He is a genuinely dangerous player on outdoor hard courts, with a flat, penetrating game off both wings and a serve that generates free points when his first serve is landing at a high percentage. He is also a Miami specialist in a specific sense. He grew up in Florida. His father, Peter Korda, has a home in Florida. He knows the conditions at Hard Rock Stadium in the way that players who have spent years competing in the same venue's atmosphere know them. Alcaraz's Miami record, by contrast, is the one asterisk in his Masters 1000 career. He won it in 2022 at 18. He lost to Grigor Dimitrov in 2023 when his wrist injury was affecting his game. He lost to David Goffin in 2024 in a match that was filed as an anomaly. He lost to Korda in 2026, trailing a pattern that has now produced 3 early exits in 4 appearances at the same tournament. Miami is the one venue on the hardcourt calendar where Alcaraz has not been able to establish the kind of dominance he has everywhere else. The reason for the Miami difficulty is partly tactical and partly environmental. Tactically, The courts at Hard Rock Stadium play slightly slower than Indian Wells, despite the outdoor hardcourt categorization, which means the bounce is higher, and opponents who can get above the ball on their ground strokes are more dangerous than in most hardcourt venues. Korda generates his forehand from a high contact point, and his ability to redirect the ball down the line from that high position creates specific problems for a player like Alcaraz, whose defensive movement is horizontal rather than vertical. The ball that stays low and bounces to hip height is the ball Alcaraz moves through with explosive efficiency. The ball that kicks high and forces a half-volley decision at shoulder height is the ball that creates the indecision Alcaraz was describing when he said he hadn't made the most of the tight moments. Environmentally, Miami is the tournament where the South Florida humidity and the specific combination of heat and moisture in the air adds a physical cost to every match that the statistics do not capture. Players who have grown up competing in those conditions, as Korda has, carry a specific advantage over players who arrive in Florida from a week in the California desert. Alcaraz arrived in Miami from Indian Wells, where the air is dry and the temperature is warm but not humid. The switch from desert to tropical is the switch that players consistently describe as more difficult to manage than the reverse. Because the humidity adds weight to every movement and reduces the speed of recovery between the most physically intense points. Tony Nadal said Alcaraz looked tired in some rallies in Indian Wells before the Miami trip began. The comeback in the second set is the part of the story that deserves the most credit and has received the least. He said he couldn't take it anymore. Lopez told him to go all the way. He went back out and fought back from 3-5 down to win 7-5, which required winning the last 4 games of the set, including breaking Korda when Korda was serving for the match. That comeback, from the lowest point of his 2026 season, in the worst physical condition he has been in all year, on the court where his record is worst, is the piece of evidence that makes the prediction about Roland Garros something more than optimism. A player who says he can't take it anymore and then immediately demonstrates that he can, who loses the set point he needed and then finds 5 more sets worth of tennis, has not lost the competitive instinct that makes him the world number 1. He has lost the physical freshness that makes it easy to express it. Those are different things. Rest addresses one of them. The other is still there. There is also a context that almost nobody in the coverage has mentioned, which is the specific fake quote that went viral immediately after the match, and that was debunked within hours by José Morón, the director of Spanish tennis outlet Punto de Break. A quote attributed to Alcaraz began circulating online that said he needed to feel that desire to go out and play again, implying a motivational crisis that was far more serious than anything he actually said. Morón went to social media immediately and said the quote was completely fake, that he had been present at the press conference and Alcaraz had said nothing remotely like it, and that whoever had created it needed to stop giving it traction. The fake quote spread because it fit a narrative people were already forming, which is that the changeover conversation and the Miami loss together signaled something deeper and darker than 2 losses in 3 weeks for a player who had won 16 in a row. The fake quote narrative and the real changeover footage are 2 completely different things. The changeover footage is genuine, raw, and honest. It shows a 22-year-old world number 1 telling his coach he can't take it anymore on a day when the accumulated weight of the season was temporarily heavier than his ability to carry it lightly. The fake quote is a fabrication that attempted to transform a human moment of exhaustion into evidence of a motivational crisis. One of them is the actual story. The other is a lie. Distinguishing between them matters not just for accuracy, but because the actual story, the changeover conversation, and what followed it, is far more interesting and far more instructive about who Alcaraz is than the narrative the fake quote tried to build. He said he couldn't take it anymore. He then won the second set. He then lost the third by a single break. He then sat in the press conference and praised Korda, acknowledged the tight moments he hadn't made the most of, described his plan to go home and rest, said the clay season was around the corner and he was excited, and said see you soon to the Miami crowd. The person who said all of those things in the same afternoon is the same person who said see you next year to Indian Wells the week before from this phone on the same night he lost. He processes, he moves forward. He does not pretend the difficult moments did not happen, but he does not allow them to define what comes next. The hard court season is over. He goes home to El Palmar. The clay season starts in Monte Carlo on April 6th. He is the defending champion. He is the world number one. He is 17-2 on the season. He said he couldn't take it anymore, and he meant it. He also said he was excited about the clay, and he meant that too. Both things are true. He is human. He is great. Those two facts, as the Miami changeover proved again, are not in opposition. The post-match press conference quote that nobody has focused on enough is the one about his opponents having more to win than to lose. He said that when you are winning tournaments and have a great win-loss record, everything becomes easier in terms of the pressure felt by opponents. He said he felt they had more to gain than to lose in those matches, and that they played without pressure almost throughout. He said it was a bit annoying, but that it had to be accepted. This is the same observation he made at Indian Wells about the target on his back and about getting tired of playing Roger Federer every round. He is saying it again in different words after a different loss. The consistency of the observation across 2 consecutive tournaments tells you it is not frustration speaking. It is an accurate read of what the world number one position costs in terms of the competitive environment you have to navigate every single week. Tony Nadal's response to this observation, offered when Alcaraz made the same point at Indian Wells, was that opponents do not raise their level because of who Alcaraz is, but because they know they are playing someone better, and that requires more from them. Both readings are true, and they are compatible. The opponents play without pressure, because the pressure gap between them and Alcaraz is so wide that any result is a bonus for them, and only one result is acceptable for him. They play freely, because the expectation is entirely on one side of the net. Alcaraz feels the asymmetry and says it is a bit annoying. He is right. It is also, as he acknowledged, something that has to be accepted, because it is the permanent condition of being the best player in the world. He is going home. He is going to El Palmar. He is going to eat at his mother's table and see his grandfather and chill with his family for a couple of days before Lopez brings him back to the practice court. He said his mind was to take some days off, reset, and be ready in good shape for the clay season. He said the clay season had really good tournaments he was excited about. He meant all of it. The reset is genuine. The excitement is genuine. The I can't take it anymore was genuine too. The world number one is human enough to say all 3 things in the same afternoon and mean every word of each of them. Do you think Alcaraz can win the Roland Garros and silences everything the Miami exit started? I would love to see your thoughts. If you hadn't subscribed yet, hit the button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video on the biggest stories in tennis.